All right, great. So now we've got a pretty minimalistic contract here for actually doing the funding. And we have all of our math for getting conversion rates done in our library price converter, which we're going to import at the top of FundMe. Cool. So at this point, we've got our fund method. Awesome. And so we can allow anybody to go ahead and fund this contract and send this contract, Ethereum or any native blockchain currency, to this contract. Well, now what do we want to do? Well, once all the funders have gone ahead and funded, we're going to want the project to be able to withdraw the funds out of this contract so they can actually go ahead and use those funds to buy things for this project. So let's go ahead and create a withdraw function. So we'll create a function withdraw and we'll make this public. Since we're going to be withdrawing all the funds out of this contract, we probably also want to reset our funders array and our address to amount funded. Since we'll be withdrawing all the funds, those amounts should go back down to 0. So let's go ahead and loop through the funders array and update our mapping object so that each of these funders now has 0, because in just a second, we're going to withdraw all the money from them. So to do this, we're going to use something called a for loop. So what is a for loop? A for loop is a way to loop through some type of index object or loop through some range of numbers or just do a task a certain amount of times repeating. So for example, let's say we have an array or a list. And on that list, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. If we wanted to get all of the elements in this array or in this list, aka 1, 2, 3, 4, how do we get all the elements in this list? Well, we would use a for loop to loop through each one of these objects. So at the 0th index would be 1, at the first index would be 2, and at the second index would be 3, and at the last index would be 4. So we would loop through the indexes 0 through 3 to get all of these elements. Or maybe another example is if this was A, B, C, D, A is at the 0th index, B is at the first index, C is at the second, and D is at the third. And we would loop 0 through 3 to get to each one of these elements. We're going to do that exact same thing, but with the funders array. So how do we actually do that? Well, we first start with the for keyword. The for keyword says, okay, we're about to start a loop. And inside of these parentheses, we define how we want to loop through it. Also, \* and */ is sort of like brackets for comments. Anything in between these two will be a comment. So in a for loop, first we give it the starting index, then we give it the ending index, and then we give it the step amount. For example, maybe we want to start with 0, we want to go to 10, and we want to go up by 1 each time. So we'd go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Or maybe we start at 0, we want to end at 10, and we go up by 2 each time. So we'd go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Or maybe we want to go from 0 to 5, we want to go from 2 to 5, with a step of 1, we'd go 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. So this is what's going to go inside of this for bit here. So for our starting index, and let me even just put this above so that you can reference it. So our starting index is going to be uint256 variable, and we're going to call it funder index. And we're going to start with funder index being equal to 0. So we're starting with 0 here. And we're going to end with the length of our funders array, since we want to loop through all of the funders. So we're going to say funder index needs to be less than funders.length. So our ending index is going to be whenever funders index is no longer less than funders.length. And then finally, we're going to say funder index equals funder index plus 1, which means that every time the code inside of this loop finishes, we're going to increase funder index by 1. That's how we go from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, etc. Another way you can type funder index equals funder index plus 1 is you can just do funder index plus plus. This plus plus syntax means funder index equals itself plus 1. So let's start looping through our funders array. To access the 0th element or the first element, we're going to say funders of funder index. So we're saying we want to access the 0th element of our funders object. And this is going to return an address for us to use. We're going to go ahead and say address funder equals funders at the funder index. So now we have this funder address, and we want to use this to reset our mapping. So we're going to say address to amount funded at the funder key is now equal to 0. Because remember, in fund, we update the amount whenever we fund the contract. When we withdraw the money from the contract, we're going to reset it back to 0. Now, let's walk through this. Funder index starts from 0, so we're going to get the 0th funder. We're going to grab that funder at the 0th index, and we're going to reset the address to amount funded of that funder to 0. Then this for loop is going to update by 1. It's going to move from 0 to 1. It's going to check then if funder index is less than the length. Let's say funders has 10 people in it. If funders has 10 people in it, it'll still be less. So now funder index will be 1. Address funder will equal funders of 1 now instead of 0. And we'll grab that address and we'll reset that address's amount funded to 0. Then we'll continue to 2, to 3, to 4, all the way up to the length of our funders array. And this is how we can loop through our objects. So saying this middle one is the ending index isn't exactly right, since we're really checking for a Boolean to see if this is still true, but hopefully you get the idea. So we've reset the balances of the mapping. However, we still haven't done two things. We still need to reset the array to make the funders a blank array. And then we also need to actually withdraw the funds. Since when we funded this, we sent message.value along with calling this fund function. However, we didn't actually withdraw the funds. So to reset the array, we could loop through it and delete objects from this address array, or we could just totally refresh this variable.